Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order for the day. First item on our agenda is approval of today's agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Citizens to be heard. Any citizens that would like to be heard on any item that is not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Approving a payment of bills and vouchers.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve paying the bills. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approval of minutes from the April 16th and 23rd, 2019 meetings.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the April 16th and 23rd meetings. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we have a couple employee recognitions this morning. First one is Esther Becerra. Esther has 25 years of service for social services. Wow, congratulations. You can't get away yet.
So Esther is currently an office support specialist in the Child Support Fraud and Collection Unit. She's instrumental in organizing the office workflow by coordinating and distributing daily mail, keeping the office equipment running, stocked, and ready for use, managing office supplies, answering phones, assisting with case files, reports, and serves, and assisting other office support in other units as well. Her expertise over the years has benefited the agency by easing the workload of child support, fraud and collection staff wherever she can in an efficient and effective manner. She is a leader among the office support, mentoring new staff, providing support and training, and keeping us updated on what's new in child support, fraud, and collections. We're so fortunate to have her. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks again, Esther. And our next award is Kevin Brayson. Morning, Kevin. Morning. Another wow, 25 years with the Highway Department. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So that's great. Dave, you have a few words to say?
I do.
Too many.
Kevin is our most senior maintenance worker, more recently promoted to road foreman, which means he's a lead worker on the crew. He runs all of our big heavy equipment, and his experience is second to none. We lean on him quite a bit. Most recently during the flood, he was very instrumental. Spent a lot of time, and looking forward to his leadership in the future, and sure appreciate having him every day.
Did you want to give a speech, Kevin?
Well, after hearing all that, I probably should ask for more money. I can escape now?
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for your service, Kevin.
Okay.
Well, when the door opens, you gotta.
Gotta walk through it.
Okay, moving right along, we have the annual report, Children's Mental Health Local Advisory Council. Carolyn. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning. I get to pick it here. Well, good morning. Okay, so let me get my paperwork organized here for you. So you should have in your packet today a report that the Local Advisory Council for Children's Mental Health put together. Before I review it, I just want to thank Commissioner Haney for being a part of our LAC. We appreciate him taking time out of his schedule to attend our meetings and provide us with input as well. I also want to thank the county for their willingness or their seeing the importance of our LAC. In other counties across the state, you see that the LAC is not quite as strong as I believe it is here in Clay County. And I think that that's really because of the leadership under social services with Rhonda Porter and Amy Amundson in really recognizing that we do play an important role in the work. So as I just want to briefly touch on this report, just a note on the front page for membership. We have a couple of additional names that we need to add to it. We have Leslie Funk, who is with the Mobile Crisis Program, and then of course Michelle Thordell, who is a recent hire with Social Services, will be joining our committee as well. So I've provided you with our work plan. It's basically the same one, and it follows under what's required under the statute for LAC to accomplish during the year. We've had some projects and activities that we've done this year, including 3 lunch and learn opportunities, which one was with the Extension Services for Youth, and that resulted in a partnership between Extension and our children's case managers in doing some activities with youth on a monthly basis, and we'll be working with them on the summer as well. So they're very appreciative of that partnership and are very excited in that they've had at least one opportunity to meet together, and everyone really enjoyed that opportunity. We also had one on vaping and tobacco use among our youth, and I'm sure you get reports from public health on that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we're fortunate here in Clay County to have someone that's going to be dedicated to that issue, and so taking off my LAC hat and putting on the collaborative hat, we are going to begin having a work group to address those issues. Let's see, on Thursday is actually Children's Mental Health Day, and we are having a lunch over at the CCRI offices in South Moorhead at 11:30, and you are welcome to attend that as well. Noon this year, we actually carved out a piece of our local legislators' time over the spring holiday break to meet with them and talk with them about some of the children's mental health concerns that we have when it comes to programming, and just wanted to really talk to them about that need, which I will go over in just a minute with you. This year we chose to do a provider survey to get some input and ask them to kind of think about the families that they serve. And so as you can see, some of these questions are very similar to the ones that we've had in the past. In question 3, when we talk about barriers, and this is my 22nd time I've come before you guys, so that transportation one is just a bugger. We're just having a lot of trouble working out really the specifics of that and what we can do to manage it. I know that West Central Initiative has got a kind of regional group put together, and the state is looking at some funding, and so Rhonda has asked me to be kind of a part of some of those conversations, and so hopefully we'll kind of try to move forward with that.
Carol, can I ask you a question on that? So, are there restrictions on who can transport children? I guess what I'm getting at is, in some of our other areas, we have a volunteer driver program where there is some, they're paid for mileage or whatever. However, there's some really problems with that too.
Right.
But I'm just wondering if that was ever cleaned up, could that be a source for transportation needs for this? in this area?
Possibly it could be. The reimbursement part of that is that whether or not the youth is with them. And so that's kind of part of that transportation piece that's often a challenge with that. And then, of course, the need for car seats if they're younger kiddos. Some other parts within the state and even in other states have started using a contracted service with like Lyft. And so we haven't really delved into whether or not that would work here, but they've had some success with that. And of course, there's the medical assistance transportation reimbursement too. But again, that's more paperwork for a family to fill out. And as you can see, we've got 74% of our families have difficulty completing all of that paperwork. So
I guess I just, when we start talking about workforce issues and all these things, we talk about the numbers of baby boomers retiring and
Absolutely.
maybe what a neat opportunity for them to do something for the community a little bit. You know, obviously they don't want to go backwards, you know, from a financial standpoint, but
Right.
but if there
Right.
could, obviously you're not going to fix transportation problems without some funding to go along with it.
Correct, right,
So,
probably, yeah.
and so what, you know, so what is the best way to do that? Could you have a volunteer driver versus Lyft? You know, what do you think you might get done more reasonable? You know, so that, I guess that's where I'm
Right,
going with it.
right,
It's just
right.
something to be thinking outside the box on.
And I apologize, I should have clarified, but like with the lift, you know, then that would, they would be assisting with that paperwork for the medical assistance reimbursement.
Oh, I
is
see.
how other
Okay.
states would do it.
Okay.
I know REACH has a volunteer driver program, but I don't believe they bring youth in. I think it's helping the older adults.
Well, that's why I asked if there's restrictions on
Yeah,
when you're dealing with, yeah.
yeah. Well, I think everything's on the table when you talk about transportation, and I
Okay.
think we also have to keep thinking outside the box. So we
Right.
appreciate any suggestions on how we can, work on that, so.
Very good.
And I think I made the comment about the Lakes and Prairies piece. I know they're really looking into the transportation, how to collaborate best, and Rhonda's been part of those discussions.
Right, right. Yeah, it's not unique to children's mental health. It's really, I mean, it's dental and medical and, you know, just getting to jobs and all sorts of things. So it really is kind of a whole system approach that we need to adjust to it, so. Yeah. Down kind of towards that end of the page where we talked about identifying needs by providers and parents. These are some things that came up at our LAC meeting, and Jim can attest to this. We have robust conversations at our LAC meeting. It's really a great group to work with. They like to bring forward needs and help each other out when they possibly can. So, you know, some of the things that you will see on this list have been on this list for a while. These are things that the state is also working with. I will mention that one of our successes that I will say in the area when it comes to the mental health provider shortage is that we learned at last week's LAC meeting that Lakeland Mental Health was able to hire on some additional mental health workers, professionals, and so they've kind of filled in that gap, which is going to reduce our waiting lists for some of those particular services, which are great. As you know, we now have expanded the school-based mental health services through funding with the collaborative as well as schools and social services, and so we have mental health services in all of our schools, and it continues to really grow with that. And then some of our final thoughts. School-based mental health, it's growing, but the funding is not. In fact, sometimes the state has been really great at providing the information on our funding for some of these mental health things, but then they pull back a little bit and reduce some of those fundings to get other things going, and sometimes that's to the detrimental of the program. We are very, very fortunate to have the mental health providers and agencies that we do. They work really intensely with families. The needs of families are more intense than I've ever seen them in the years that I've been doing this work in parent leadership. It's almost to the point where it's a little bit scary and overwhelming when we think of some of the needs of these kiddos, especially when these kids are getting younger and younger with all of those needs. I also have a document for you, and I apologize, I don't think it was in your packet, but it may have been. Is it in your packet? No. But this is kind of just for your reference. There's been a couple of really excellent reports out on children's mental health, and I would be happy to forward those PDFs if it's something that you are all interested in looking at. One of them is really on the intense services that are needed, and the sheet that I've just passed around shows you what services are really reimbursed under the youth, for youth under the public health insurances, so kind of those state aid programs. And then there's also a section for those that are reimbursed under the private commercial plans. And you can see there's really a big gapping hole in there when it comes to the community-based services and supports. Those services are very effective for our families. Many of them, primarily I would say the CTSS and some of those therapy components, are what we have been providing to schools. And unfortunately, that's not covered under private insurance. And so we've got some kiddos that could really use that are not getting it. In one instance, we actually have a family that was willing to pay out of pocket so that their son could get those services at school. So that's really a gap, and that's one of the components that we talked to our legislators about when they were here in April, about how do we cover that gap? How do we get insurance, private insurance, to cover some of those that are way more cost effective in providing than some of those higher end hospitalization and residential programs. And you guys all know how much residential takes up of your budget. In the report, they noted that 20% of school-age children have a mental health need. And so in Clay County, looking at our school population, we're talking about 2,150 students, and I believe that that number is higher than that when we look at it at a 20%. Those are kids that are in our schools that desperately need mental health services. Another report, which I haven't completed investigating, is that it's an inventory and benefit cost piece. And for just one of the services that is provided, I'll give you an example of, is one that's provided for our little ones. It's a parent-child interaction therapy component. It requires the provider to go through a certification and training program, and then there's a supervision piece. The state of Minnesota reimbursed that at $13.44 every 15 minutes, compared to two other states who reimburse it at $30 and at $43 for every 15 minutes. So we have programs that are exceeding the cost for our providers. 31 of 37 treatment programs are exceeding the cost of what our providers are getting reimbursed at. Now, we have providers and they have their doors open, so we're okay. But when you see how challenging that can be, and we talked about this at the last LAC meeting, we really need to work with our legislators about that. And so I know that all of you have an opportunity to visit with our legislators. I would ask and recommend that whenever you need that voice, please pull in the LAC, because we would be happy to visit with them as well. We have kids that have needs, and we have providers that also need to be able to keep their doors open. And when we can get early services like those community-based ones, it benefits everybody, because it allows us to have tax dollars for something else. So with that, that is my report, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And then we do have a proclamation that we would ask that you consider passing today.
Any questions for Carolyn? Okay, we've got the proclamation, Mental Health Month 2019, and whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and whereas identifying and intervening and addressing problems with effective treatment earlier proves children, youth, and adults to lead productive lives, and whereas there is a strong research that diet, exercise, sleep, and stress management can help all Americans protect their health and well-being, and whereas Clay County has made a commitment to community-based systems of mental health care for all residents and has appointed local mental health advisory councils for adults and children, and whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen share the burden of mental health problems and has a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention efforts. Therefore, we, the Clay County Board of Commissioners, proclaim May 2019 as Mental Health Month, and specifically May 9th as Children's Mental Health Day in Clay County, Minnesota. As Commissioners of Clay County, we call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in Clay County to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health. The steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health and need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health conditions. Adopted the 7th day of May 2019. Board's wishes?
I'd move the proclamation.
Commissioner Whalen, I've got dance copy, please.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All same sign, motion carries.
Since Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, so you all have to agree. That's why when the proclamation is how we keep this free.
Got green pants.
And there you go.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yes.
Okay, annual report, Clay County Adult Mental Health, Barbara Bustamante and Allison Wobeck. Good morning, Allison.
Good morning. It seems that Barbara is not here yet, so I will just get started.
Sure. Please
As-
do.
As you said, I'm Allison Wolbeck, and I'm co-chair of the Clay County Adult Mental Health Local Advisory Council. A lot of things in our report are similar from last year, so I won't take up a bunch of your time reading through what you are capable of reading. And I will just skip to the issues that we've discussed in the past year. And the first one is housing support. In the past years, the need for affordable housing has increased. Many efforts have been utilized to reduce homelessness in Clay County with both public and nonprofit programs. However, a majority of the housing units are out of reach financially for adults with a lived mental health experience. Currently, Clay County uses various assistance programs that are used by adults with a lived mental health experience. Many of these resources are inadequate or unavailable due to the state of current housing needs. Providers as well as community residents are aware of the fact that about half of all renters are considered overburdened in their ability to afford to pay rent. It is difficult to thrive in an environment where one is financially stressed. This difficulty is paramount when one is dealing with a lived mental health experience. Our recommendations are to revise existing rental rehabilitation programs and encourage private market owners to keep rental units affordable to low-income renters. Improve protections for renters by identifying and cracking down on predatory rental practices, including excessive evictions and poor conditions of rental units. Also, provide a dependable and consistent funding for social services that help maintaining stable homes and identifying gaps for adults with a lived mental health experience. We would also ask that when given the opportunity to speak with our state representatives, that you advocate for these things as well. Next, we have transportation. Transportation continues to be an area of concern. In order to grow a healthy economy and eliminate this barrier to employment, we need to look at the amount of time it takes to travel from point A to point B, the number of transfers it takes, and the coverage of the area in regards to public transportation. Industrial areas that house large opportunities for employment still do not have adequate public transportation. Appropriate car seats and maneuvering a family through bus changes is an added burden to parents seeking mental health services. Lack of adequate, affordable housing has continued to drive tenants to seek housing in smaller communities and sacrifice lower cost transportation options. Previous efforts have been made to address some of these barriers. However, complete follow-through has not yet taken place. Our recommendation is to reconvene the organizations who have previously worked on these issues with representation from a county commissioner. Those agencies that were involved in this previously were the Clay County Social Services Director, Adult and Children's Social Service Directors, Mental Health Providers, and Adult and Children's Local Advisory Councils. This group should also establish a list of barriers, goals, objectives, and timelines to accomplish them.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you don't currently, okay, so you just said that you'd like to reconvene the discussion.
Yes.
Clarify for me, I thought that there was discussion happening at the committee level about this.
We previously were meeting, and there was a survey done of mental health providers to find out how people made it to their appointment, if there were any barriers, and there was really no follow-through after that point.
Okay, so that specific point isn't discussed in the Mental Health Advisory Council?
I'm sorry.
That specific topic area isn't being discussed in the advisory council, or the advisory council isn't meeting?
The group that was put together to discuss transportation
Okay,
is not
I
meeting.
gotcha. Okay.
Other needs. Broadband service, internet service is vital and a necessity in everyday life. The additional stress of not being able to communicate can be difficult for anyone, but for a consumer of mental health services, it becomes traumatic. While traveling through rural Clay County, problems exist in maintaining cell phone service. In cases of emergency or the need for a crisis response team, this becomes a problem. Our recommendation is to utilize local and state resources to ensure that Clay County has broadband service countywide. We also have our membership list that needs approving today, and I'm open for questions.
Questions?
I'm just gonna go back to the transportation point piece. I think that there's enough awareness that that's a problem. And I think between what Carolyn just talked about and what Rhonda, we've kind of talked about, and what this, I think there's enough individuals that know that there might be a need, that I think we can maybe have some follow-up on what those discussions are. And it's hard when you know that there's a problem, right? But I think there's enough people that are identifying that the transportation piece is an issue, and so I think that we definitely can have discussions going forward. Rhonda, do you want to?
Yeah, I can just add some information. What Allison is talking about is, a few years ago, we got a group of us together to really talk about Clay County and transportation issues, because obviously we see it in our organization that the LACs have both been reporting on transportation for quite a long time. So we met, we pulled in different providers, we tried some surveys. Quite honestly, I don't know that we got a lot of traction with some of the information. I think we did make some headway. We haven't met for a while, but since then, the Regional Transportation Coordinating Council with West Central Minnesota Community Action Agency came before you about a month ago. So that's kind of some renewed effort at, I think, trying to address transportation issues, not only in our county, but in the region. So, and that information, all of that has really not trickled to the adult mental health initiative, so I apologize for that, Allison. But I would see having a representative of both the children's LAC as well as the adult LAC be a part of that RTCC, so that we can kind of resurrect some of those issues and focus with that project. So,
And I think that this board sees it's an issue
Yeah.
and a need, and so I'm just wondering what you need from us, if you feel like there's enough framework in place to reconvene together and get a plan going forward, or what else do you need?
Yeah, we will hear relatively quickly about that Regional Transportation Coordinating Council grant. And then there will be an individual hired to kind of spearhead that in the region. And at that point, then I'd like to invite the adult LAC and our children's LAC to join that. And we maybe we will develop a subcommittee as a part of that to really focus in on Clay County and bring that then to the RTCC. So I will take the lead in kind of organizing that.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you, Ron.
I just want to comment too on the broadband issue. Clay County not too long ago did join in with several other counties in the state of Minnesota in joining a coalition to support better broadband service throughout. It's not only a Clay County problem, it's a problem throughout all the rural counties in Minnesota. And as a matter of fact, there's a couple of metro counties that still even have some issues with it. But, you know, I think they're, the funding is the key thing, and so I think through the legislature, they've been working hard on that. And that's an area that from the public standpoint, we have to partner with the private companies who provide the services. There's no public entity that really supplies broadband service. It's all done in the private market. You know, so there has to be that communication and how, you know, where is it in the state's interest to help these private companies expand their infrastructure. And I think that is being worked on.
Okay, wonderful.
You needed something approved?
Yes, our membership list.
Membership. We have a motion?
Move approval.
Second motion.
Motion and a second to approve the membership list. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you very
And
much.
you're here for the next issue, I see, too.
I'm going to sit with Daryl.
Okay, Place for Hope, Recovery and Wellness Center, Daryl Vasvik. Good morning, Daryl.
I'm new to the organization, been here since June last year.
Welcome.
Just to kind of remind everybody, our mission, it's a place of hope, is to provide a safe, enriching, and supportive recovery environment for adults living with a mental illness, build social relationships, promote peer mentoring, improve health outcomes, and provide educational opportunities to lead a successful integrated life in the community. Some of our highlights this last year, just kind of go through them quickly. We received income from you folks for $47,899, from BCAL $66,086. We were very fortunate since I came there. BCAL gave us one-time funding for $7,182, which we were able to purchase a couple more deep freezes, 4 new computers, software and computer chairs, 30 dining room chairs, a sewing machine, and a quilting machine. We had fundraising of about $1,521, miscellaneous income of $1,418, and we also were able to get some new shelving provided for our food pantry from the FM Sertoma Club, as well as about 2,000 foods from the Sertoma Club from the Holiday Lights and the Wood Lights Project. Our expenses were $132,048, which actually left us with a deficit of just about $8,000 last year. Members attending this year were 5,645. Our record attendance for a day was around 50 members, with our average daily attendance around 20. We were open 323 days. We prepared 4,360 meals. Since I've been there in June, I do prepare a noon lunch every day, Tuesday through Friday. I worked with the Great Plains Food Bank and have recently just became certified with a 5-year certificate for the Save for Serve certification through the Restaurant Association. Also, since I've been at the Great Plains Food Bank, I since I started at A Place for Hope, I've gone to the Great Plains Food Bank daily and have been able to distribute just about 48,000 pounds of food this last year. We had 3,740 volunteer hours. We offered 135 in-house activities with 3,282 attending. We offered 161 community activities with 663 attending, and offered 52 educational activities. We brought in 23 new members. Our goals for 2019, I've been working closely with the Great Plains Food Bank and the state of Minnesota, and we just recently implemented the Emergency Food Assistantship Program. I got this done in February, and since then it's a monthly distribution of food that we get from the USDA, and we brought in, let's see, just about 3,300 pounds of extra food, which is your fresh meats, fruits, vegetables, and that type of thing to be distributed to our members. So that's a new, something new to us, and it's very beneficial to our members. We just recently got an MSUM grad student that is going to be working on our intake process. We're doing everything longhand right now with Excel sheets, takes hours and hours, and he's going to be trying to get that set up electronically for us. We hope to get Berry Foundation Summer Intern as a grant, and we're going to help us implement the SAMHSA 8 Dimensions of Wellness. We're also trying to see what other grants we can get out there. We did hold a new major fundraiser in January, and we raised about $5,000 of that. We're trying to build a better diverse board and increase our members. And since the beginning of the year, I've brought in about 10 new members, and I think there's about 15 applications out right now. So we're trying to get our numbers back up again. Before Pat Boyer left, I met with Pat and Rhonda to talk about maybe getting a little bit more additional funding. I have a part-time life enrichment coordinator right now, and that's our only other employee. If I could get about $15,000 more, I could turn that into a full-time position. I kind of look at, we're very comparable to a place to belong in Fergus Falls, and they get about 3 times more funding than we do, and they have 6 employees. And it just allows them to go out and try to do more fundraising locally and whatever, because when you don't have that, you're having to sit in the office and get things done. And so I'd like the board to consider that in the future, and also invite all of you to come and visit our club.
Thank you. Any questions for Daryl?
I have a question on your financials. So I see that you had a loss of
8,000.
Do you have a reserve?
We do.
Okay. What, is there a balance on that reserve?
Our balance in our reserve at the end there is about $50,000.
Okay, okay. And then, I guess, when did you, so you spent about $7,100 in adding the deep freezers and the computers.
Right.
Was that?
That was money we got from BCOW.
Okay. Thank you. And you have an opening on your board as well? Is that what
We have a couple.
Okay.
We'd like to get somebody more in the finance end because we have no treasurer at this point, and maybe somebody more in the IT.
Okay.
I'm working on that right now with some of the banks.
Okay.
We're also in need of a new van, so we're trying to go out and reach out to some of the different foundations and whatever to see what we can get.
Okay.
Any other questions for Daryl? Thanks, Daryl, for all your great work. I do appreciate what you guys do, so thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is request of funds for agreement with the Tyler Technology for National Incident-Based Reporting Project. Sheriff and Big Chief Deputy.
Morning.
I just want to say that I appreciate seeing the sheriff at the board meeting when my building is not burning at my house. So thank you for the quick response.
Absolutely. I
A
happen to be
little less
close.
stressful.
Yeah, I happen to be close, so I was glad to be there.
Right there when I had my fire too.
I was, yeah. You guys don't need that
Those
fire.
Yeah, yeah, you know,
don't like those fires.
that's how I want to get your attention.
Yeah, let's not do that. So, we're here today.
Fire and the sheriff will be there.
Yeah, I hope that. So, we're here today, we initially thought we were gonna need to request some additional funds for this project to go from, it's called uniform crime reporting to incident-based reporting. And we're working with Fargo IT. Steve is actually working with Fargo IT to get this project rolling. We need to do this in order to have all of our crimes in the county, to include our smaller cities, report to the BCA, which is how we get all the crime reports into the state. It's some type of connection that Tyler Technologies has to make through our CAD RMS system. I don't know all the particulars to that. They're the ones that know that stuff because they're the IT people. We initially thought that we were going to need roughly $15,600 for this. That's going to be split evenly amongst the six departments in Clay County, the sheriff's office, and then all of the rural police departments to include Moorhead. We were able to get and secure an $8,000 grant from the BCA, so that brings that fund down to $7,600 that we're all responsible for. We necessarily don't need the funds this year. We will budget for it next year to where we will be billing all the police departments. We're kind of going to be the lead agency in this. We're looking for the approval to be able to sign the contract with Tyler Technologies to get this ball rolling. It needs to be completed by January of 2021. Is that
Yes.
the summary?
And the billing won't happen, we just found out until the completion of the project. So we didn't know that, that's why we originally asked for the funds up front, because we'll be the billing agent and then we'll in turn bill the small departments for it. But it's something that all the departments need. We're just a conduit for them to have access to it, because the BCA reports all the crime stats to the FBI, and that's mandated how we have to do it now, so that's why we have to go with this project.
It's a one-time bill. It's not going to be that every year. It's just one-time cost.
Okay.
Everybody's getting equal split on it, $26.50 apiece.
It'll be less
It's
than
roughly about $1,266, $67.
It's gone down after that.
Yeah, after the BCA.
Yeah, it really went down after that.
Fargo IT secured that grant with the BCA. They knew that there was possibly funds available, and with working with them, they received the $8,000 grant with the BCA to make this happen. That lessened our cost for the whole project.
Okay.
So that's the Minnesota, the 7,600 is the Minnesota share.
It is our share of
County.
it. Yep, it's the entire Clay
And
County
then
share
that'll
of
be
it.
split in 6 ways.
Yep. It was 2,600 initially, but then when we got the $8,000 from the BCA, it dropped that figure down.
Because that was an unknown, whether we were gonna get that or not.
Okay, the board's wishes.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the sheriff's department's request. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Sheriff, you've got another joint powers agreement and resolution, the state of Minnesota regarding Minnesota Internet crimes against children.
This is something that we've been doing for years at the sheriff's office. We do have a deputy that's assigned to this. It's just a joint powers type task force that he's able to investigate these crimes against children. Steve can elaborate a little bit more on it. We are not looking for any additional costs with this. We're looking to be able to sign the resolution and the contract with them to be able to continue on with our deputy to do that type of investigation.
We have one investigator that's trained with these internet crimes, and since this region, if we have something locally out in the county in small towns or even neighboring counties, since our person is trained, the state will reimburse us any overtime funds that we incur if we are helping with them type of investigations. So it's a win for us, plus we have the expertise within our own department to handle these type of incidents or calls.
Kevin, you had a question?
Is this a renewal of a?
Yes, it is.
Of an agreement, of a previous agreement?
Yeah, we've been involved with this for as long as I can remember.
And the agreement kind of remains the same? Or?
Yes. Nothing has changed on the agreement at all.
I guess, Mr. Wright, anytime that we have a JPA, and I don't know if our attorney's office has reviewed it yet, but I would certainly move approval of this subject to county attorney's approval of the JPA itself.
Second motion.
They also handle all training. They pay for the training if we send our person to it.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
those
that's
expenses
good.
are taken out too.
Great. Okay, we have motion and a second with approval of, or a review of the county attorney's office on the JPA. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do some committee reports and get those out of the way, Jenny.
Thank you. Going back a couple of weeks, I believe, we had the county managers off-site meeting. I was able to attend the morning session. We talked about the demographic shifts in rural Minnesota, a presentation from the University of Minnesota Extension. I feel like that those facts will be important in how we develop how we can serve citizens best. And so I think the staff had a good opportunity to kind of talk about that a little bit and talk about ways forward. I attended the land management meeting for the Diversion Authority. The following day, talked about the property acquisition status reports, continued discussion on the lands outreach and appraisal services. I did have a question again about the Ag Subcommittee and when those detailed discussions will go forward and who will be represented there. And I think it's a hard time of year because a lot of those producers are busy, but I'm hoping that we can continue to have their input going forward. The pollinator, had a meeting about the pollinator habitat land in the old Crestwood subdivision, making sure that we have that ground is best prepared for planting as soon as possible. Last week I also attended interviews for the planning and zoning director. We had a good set of candidates, and further discussion will be coming to you in the future, I think. And I also attended the MetroCog Executive Committee meeting. We approved the lease amendment between MetroCog and the Case Plaza building. Had an additional budget item about the lease payments now that they're in the old City of Fargo office building while the remodel is going on at the Case Plaza building. And I believe that concludes that report. And then as chair of the Lakeland board, I am in the process of doing executive director annual reviews. I believe that's everything. That concludes my report.
Thanks.
Oh, you got by easy.
Kevin?
Well, I had a building fire, so, at my house.
Okay, on April 24th, we had the Prairie Lakes meeting in Perham, and that continues to go well. Right now, we're trending towards having a significant revenues over expenditures at the end of the year. It's quite a turnaround from having to have $1.5 million cash call from a few years ago. We did approve some internal controls dealing with basically eliminating cash at that facility and requiring everything to be done by credit card, I guess. So that was a state audit recommendation. On the 24th, I also came back then and had the diversion public outreach meeting, and again, some of those same things. You know, we talked. Some of them we kind of coordinate between that and the land management committee meeting in terms of what activities or outreach is being done with some of those property owners. We continue to talk about the Buffalo Red public permitting process, and then the updated analytics from the fmdiversion.com. We constantly, and there's 3 questions that different people are asked. So there's videos done that people can go to online and see why the diversion is important. And then on the land management meeting, and I think Commissioner Mojo, reported on that. The key is the status updates. I do want to say that since there's been areas of the previous injunctions that were lifted for some work to take place, although it's done in North Dakota, we recently have had, I believe it was another 6 or 7 Minnesota property owners who are voluntarily looking at their land being purchased for the project. So until we form our own Minnesota entity, which we're working on, that process is working on, the Cass Joint Water Resource District is looking at doing those purchases on behalf of the Diversion Authority, with the idea in mind. And one of the things that I did mention in land management is that when all is said and done, any lands that are owned by the Diversion Authority in Minnesota should be owned by us, and they should be in our name and our title. So I think there's an agreement in principle that once this newly formed JPA in Minnesota is done, that Cass County Joint Water Resource District will deed over those properties to our newly formed entity. So we stay consistent on all Minnesota properties owned by the same entity. So that's kind of what's going on there. Then on the 25th in the morning, we had a Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting. We got an update on the landfill project with Matt Evans from Burns and McDonald, and then Kirk gave a report, and Steve did give from the city, did give a report on the commercial recycling pilot project that went on there. And I think they're looking at trying to make that move forward. He's trying to see how he can incorporate. He did say the results weren't quite as good as they had anticipated or hoped for, but it still is something they're going to look at possibly moving forward with on a more permanent basis. And we did learn more that Dilworth is going to single sort as well, which is good. That afternoon on the 25th, we did have the actual Diversion Authority meeting, and again, that's the meeting where a lot of the actions are taken that are dealt with through the public outreach and the lands committee, and it goes through, and we did approve the 2009 program budget. That was approved at that meeting, and there continues to be preparation for task orders number 5 and 6, which relate to some of it has to do with the future P3 project that's going forward. On the 29th, we had the owner architect construction manager meeting on the jail and LEC. In terms of the correctional facility, there's still some leaks that are going on with some of the plumbing that they're working on and actually in both buildings, they're really trying to ask everybody in the building to keep an eye on things that could fall under warranty, because I think, is it this July, Steve, that the warranty is up. So we continue to monitor those areas. Then right after that, we did have the meeting on the West Central Juvenile, and that one continues. The biggest issue on that one always seems to be focused on the contingency, and I think if Steve might report a little bit more on that, but that continues to be a concern based on where we are within the project. But we also know that we have funds from the whole bonding thing that could still cover that at this point. So then on yesterday, excuse me, on the Tuesday the 30th, we had a diversion chairs coordinating meeting, and those are held weekly, and we reviewed a 60 to 90 day plan where they're reviewing the financial plan. As you know, the diversion had asked the state of Minnesota for $300 million, or state of North Dakota, state of North Dakota for an additional $300 million, and they did approve 180. So there's that $120 million gap, and there's been this conversation publicly that they're going to be forced to have special assessments. The plan is still no, they're not intending to use special assessments. and they're reviewing some other options there. Then on the Thursday, the May 2nd, we had our Clay County Joint Powers meeting, and the focus was on, we did have a Christy Spindler was there she's a Human Resources Director with Obermiller Nelson Engineering, talking about workforce demands and that type of thing, and then we had quite a conversation regarding the DGF deal that's going on with the what's that called, Jim? The where they're doing the student where they purchased the Sam's Club building for.
Oh, the Career Academy.
Yeah, Career Academy. Yeah, and you know there's a lot of excitement towards that. We did have quite the dialogue regarding again joining the two committees together, and there was certainly, I think I was in a minority arguing that we should keep them separate. So that topic is going to continue on into the next meeting, but there seems to be a preference by most to.
And here's
So
the deal.
Commissioner Mojo, I
If
kind
we are
of,
the only ones that feels that additional conversation is helpful to everyone else, then I guess
Yeah.
that's just the way it is.
Right.
And if they
Well,
don't want to do it,
I-
that's not,
I did put up a fight.
yeah.
I'm not sure if that was the consensus still, Kevin.
Yeah.
All due respect.
Okay. Well, I think
Commissioner Mojo's thoughts were taken into consideration.
yeah, and I made it clear that I shared Commissioner Mojo's, but there were others who felt that combining them could be better, so. So we'll see. I'm not gonna fight hard to be on another committee if I don't need to be.
Especially if we've got a school district looking at another big referendum
Right.
needed. And,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, we're looking at space needs or
Right.
service needs. And
You would think it, you know. So I think they talked about maybe adjusting where a couple of those meetings a year would strictly focus on the,
The greater picture.
yeah, and the capital needs, so. So I'll leave that alone until the next time it comes up. Then again, yesterday, we did have this week's version of the Chairs Coordinating Meeting with the Diversion Authority. And, you know, kind of the same things. We did talk an awful lot more about the Buffalo Red permit and those types of things. But one of the things that we did have, and this might be an appropriate time to hand this out, I guess. I was going to wait till I was right on our agenda, but if I could give one of these to each of you. And this is it's a kind of a good summary of where we are at in several areas of what's going on, whether it's financial, construction, P3, permitting Minnesota, what's going on with the contested case, the Buffalo Red permit, the federal litigation and land acquisitions. So it kind of gives a brief discussion of each of those items. So that's the latest. That's just for an FYI for you as board members. And that, and of course, there's the Diversion Authority technical people have responded or are going to be responding to some questions that were asked by the Buffalo Red board in terms of issues based on what are the benefits to Moorhead and Clay County for the project, and those will be submitted this week to the Buffalo Red.
That's all?
That's it. So, yeah.
Commissioner Haney.
Okay, on the 23rd, I attended the county manager's off-site meeting
Oh, I
along
did
with the
that
other
too.
commissioners.
I did
You
that
missed
too.
one. On Wednesday, the 24th, I attended the Flood Finance Committee and Flood Diversion Finance Committee meeting. On Wednesday, the 1st of May, I attended the City of Moorhead Planning Committee meeting, and we had a presentation of the draft 12th Avenue South Corridor Study Report, which, if all goes well, is slated to be constructed in the summer of 2020, 12th Avenue South in Moorhead, from the river over to 20th Street. And they want to have bike paths on both north and south sides of the street, the full length of that corridor, and they will be closing some approaches over by Concordia College and several other things. And then also on the 1st, I attended Independent School District 152 Legacy event at the Marriott, and we heard a report about the decision to upgrade the Moorhead High School and keep one high school in town instead of two. And also, we heard quite a presentation from Brian Berg of Zerberg Architect, which has been the architect for the school projects in Moorhead in the past, about converting the Sam's Club into the Career Academy and some of the great buzz that's going on about that. That is going to be it all ties into the workforce shortages that we're having, and what an idea to get a kid coming out of high school to have a skill in welding already. What an advantage. Or body work, or whatever it might be. IT, they had a whole list of the 7 major categories they're going to. Yeah, they had all that stuff. So that was exciting. And then, let's see, on Thursday, May 2nd, I attended the aforementioned Joint Powers meeting along with Commissioner Campbell. And I believe that's the end of my whole report.
Thank you. I had Prairie Lakes, Kevin reported on that, and then I attended the morning session of the county offsite retreat meeting, and that was a good session, I thought. Steve, what do you got?
My microphone is down, I'm just going to slide over here quick. Thank you, Mr. Chair. After board last week, as has been mentioned, we had our managers offsite. Again, I want to thank the board for their continued support of that event. I think it's beneficial to get all the department heads and supervisors together, and here are some speakers, and also look to the future for Clay County. So thank you. That morning we had Ryan Pesch, who came in and spoke on some of the changing demographics that we're seeing in our area. With 10,000 baby boomers retiring each day. Very soon the millennial age group will be the largest working group, and so what are those effects going to be? And one of the other interesting parts that came out of that session was based on the demand that we have for employees in our area. People moving in from different parts of the United States to address our needs are not going to cover the growing demands, and so we're going to have to look at other ways to bring in potential people. That afternoon, we participated in a strategic vision planning. AMC Ryan Erdman facilitated our groups. We brainstormed on potential areas of needs from immediate up to 3 to 5 years. Our groups came up with over a dozen ideas. We combined different things and broke them down into committees. And we addressed 4 main areas. So it would be capital planning and campus space issues, recruitment retention, efficiencies between departments, and succession planning. And so Mr. Erdman is going to be providing us kind of a summary of that day, and Darren and I will hope to come forward to the board for some additional discussion and direction on that here probably next week. That evening I participated in the Buffalo Red informational meeting out in Dilworth. On the 25th, I had a conversation with Mike Ringo on a series of legal issues here at the county. On the 26th, I met with the Commissioner Mojo mentioned Crestwood meeting. We're out in Crestwood, met with the with Chief Deputy Lanson on some FF&E issues over at the Law Enforcement Center. On the 29th, I toured the Juvenile Center. They're really making some progress over there. They're hoping to turn over the additional southwest and southeast sections of the facility by mid-July, which will alleviate some of the least secure space issues that we're having. Non-secure will also be moving into their space while they move into their final phase 3 to deal with the residential secure and the non-secure area. That afternoon I participated in the LEC owners meeting and WCRJC owners meeting. I'll be coming forward with some change orders. We have addressed some of those change orders. Just giving the board a warning, it's a fairly significant increase. But as Commissioner Campbell mentioned, there's been a number of discussions on the advisory board level and with James and Lori on ways that they plan to tackle that. On the 30th, I met with Bonnie Rader, our former county recorder. She's now Region 10 Public Employee Pension Service Association on the board of directors, and they're looking to increase the number of people that they have there. So I'll be working with Darren to look at ways to get that information out. She may pop in for just a brief discussion to the board to explain that process. So on the 30th, I participated in the chair coordinator meeting, which has been covered. On the 1st of May, we participated in the planning and zoning interviews for the director. We believe we have a candidate. An offer has been made, and we hope to be before you next week with an appointment for your consideration. So we're excited about that. We're very excited about the candidates, and we think we have a really good person. So participated on the 2nd, the joint powers. Again, that's been mentioned. I think one of the interesting parts that Christy Spindler talked about is as many challenges as we feel that we have with the hiring process in our area. She indicated down in the cities it's much worse, and that we haven't seen anything yet if that moves our way. So that was not good news. That morning we also participated in the Strive for Excellence. We kind of recapped the manager's retreat and talked on some additional recruiting and retention issues. Been management meeting right after that. And on the 6th, participated again in the chair coordinator meeting. And just two quick things. Tomorrow we'll be doing after 5 o'clock. Joe is going to have a crew coming through to clean out all the parking lots. And so if you can have our staff and our campus move their cars onto the street for a night, that would be greatly appreciated. And also at the last board meeting, we talked about the next District 4 meeting. And I did send something out, but just a reminder, we're meeting June 14th in Fergus. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, anybody need a break?
Yeah,
Okay.
2 minutes.
We'll take about a 2-minute break. Okay, we'll resume the meeting. Next item is proclamation for Corrections Officer Week, May 7th through the 13th. Julie.
Yes, thank you for your time. Would like it if you would proclaim this National Corrections Officer Week for Clay County too. We have an amazing group of people working over there, dedicated and hardworking, and they really deserve the recognition. We're very lucky to have them.
Okay, we've got a Corrections Officer Week proclamation, and I will read that. Whereas correctional officers are trained law enforcement professionals dedicated to maintaining safe correctional facilities and ensuring the public safety, and whereas correctional facilities across the U.S., both civilian and military, public and private, adult and juvenile, are run by highly qualified and experienced individuals with a deep understanding of the challenges with the profession, and whereas correctional officers and employees are responsible for the custody, care, and rehabilitation of thousands of offenders every year, as well as the maintenance of safe and secure facilities. And whereas correctional officers and employees are resourceful, capable, patient, and persistent professionals in criminal justice and our nation. And whereas correctional officers and employees serve admirably in many different capacities, including jail administrators, wardens, chaplains, nurses, supervisors, social workers, teachers, managers, and directors. And whereas correctional officers and employees teach, train, mentor, counsel, and treat thousands of offenders. And whereas correctional officers and employees provide offenders with direction, hope, and a new focus while assisting with reentry and life outside corrections. And whereas correctional officers and employees rise to meet any challenge and serve this honorable profession nobly and admirably. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Clay County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaim May 7th through May 13th as Corrections Officers Week in Clay County, as correctional officers and employees deserve the recognition for their service and should be commended by leaders in the profession, in the public, and our elected officials for the tremendous job they do and exceptional performance of duties under the most difficult of circumstances. Adopted the 7th day of May, 2019.
Make a motion to approve the resolution?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys. Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
great work.
Thank
And
you.
tell
Thank you
your
very
staff, we truly appreciate all they do, so. Thank you. Okay, next item is Baker Property Special Assessment. Steve and Lori and Emma.
Morning.
Morning. Morning again, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Before you, as you are all well aware, the Planning and Zoning Department and our legal department has been working on a planning and zoning issue down in Baker, going on about 2 years now. Property of Michael Wagner in Baker, Minnesota has a home, deck, and some utilities located on a neighbor's lot and property. And been working with planning and zoning to have it removed. We've had very little success, and much of the argument that Mr. Wagner has provided, and he's been unable to provide funding to do the work. He also has been unable to provide or to obtain funding from a financial institution. And so the request that we have before you this morning for your consideration is Mr. Wagner has come forward with a list of costs associated with moving his home and the utilities and his deck, up to $15,000. And what we would be looking to do is have him provide those invoices to Ms. Johnson. We would pay the costs of the move, and then we would assess it annually as a special assessment. So that is a request before you, and stop for any questions or comments. Kevin?
Yeah, I certainly support doing this. I just have a couple questions. My experience in the past is any time that there's been special assessments involved with things, there's typically been a petition to do so. I don't know if that, in this case, if that is legally required?
That, we're working with the attorney's office.
Okay.
We just wanted to get this approval, so because he's got contractors ready to go.
Okay.
So the legal
Okay.
part of actually
Okay.
putting the specials on, we're working with them to see if we have to have hearings and that sort of thing.
Okay. I just wanted to just make sure that we're
Yep.
covered there. And I think Lori, I've talked to you about this, even though it's not a lot of money, but as we do need to pay the contractors themselves for the work.
Yes,
And at the same point, we should be asking for lien waivers
Correct, yeah.
on all those as well. Those are my only issues with it.
Yeah, those
so.
are good points, and it's good work on all your part to get
Yes.
this issue resolved, hopefully once and for all. So Jenny, did you have a question?
Well, the landowner had reached out to me and just basically said that at this point, he's, obviously there's a court order, but the financial piece is the problem. And so I think to show flexibility to try to resolve this issue, I think is important. My question would be is at what percentage annually would it be paid out? Have we identified how many years?
I told them 7 years, being at such a high number. We initially were looking at 5, but being at so much to make it at least a little bit affordable, tried to push it out to 7 years at 5%. And I did talk to him this morning, and he indicated he's going to try and pay it off earlier if possible, but at least it'll be guaranteed on those 7 years.
Any other questions? It's the board's wishes.
I'll make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
With the attorneys.
I
review.
was trying to word that with the attorney's piece, and are we gonna cap it at the 15, is that?
Correct, and
Maximum.
maximum
Maximum
$15,000.
$15,000.
Okay, and there was a second. So I guess, for the record, I think the fact that we're trying to resolve something through a court order too, I think there's a uniqueness to this. I think we need to be careful that that's put in the record, that we're doing this also as part of to resolve a court order issue. I don't want to get into the business of everybody who wants to do a $15,000 remodeling job that they can
Right.
come
Well,
and
and
have
I-
special assessed.
Yeah,
And
this
I-
is a different.
To follow up with that, I think that's an important point to note, but also the unable to secure the bank funding piece. And
Right.
so here, we're trying to keep somebody out of jail, but we're also trying to remedy an issue that's really between all of your departments, the sheriff's department.
Right.
We've spent a lot of time trying to
Right.
figure this out.
But I think we need to have that noted on the record, so that.
Sure. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thanks,
Thank you.
good work. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, approval of resolution 2019-21 for Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Act. Emma and Kevin. Good morning.
So each year, the county receives state aid dollars, I believe from the DNR, for aquatic invasive species prevention. And we used to work with the Red River Basin Commission on these programs. It probably seems familiar to you because in January, we passed a resolution saying that we were going to be doing that again. However, it has come to our attention that they no longer provide programming for aquatic invasive species. So we had been looking for a new way to utilize those funds, and lucky for us, in April, the Clay County Soil and Water Conservation District approved or accepted that role at the county to take on that work for us and to use up some of those funds. And so we have a new resolution here, which is essentially the same one that you passed in January, just updated to be the Clay County Soil and Water. And I'll note that in 2019, Clay County was allocated $17,099. And additionally, there's a balance of $71,386 in the fund that can be used for aquatic invasive species.
So there's been a substantial amount of time that, this money hasn't really been going, we've been receiving it, it's been seen in an account to do something with it, and from my experience, anytime we've partnered with the SWCD, you guys have gone beyond with what we've given you, and so I feel like partnering to work through this, I think is an important role. It gives an additional opportunity for the SWCD to get your name out and show people the work you're doing, but there's accesses in Clay County that I think we could really use this money for. So.
I guess my question is, how in the world did we end up with $71,000? That's still there because it was my understanding that annually we were allotted the amount of money and.
Yeah, they were gonna spend it. Yeah.
And we forward that money to the Basin Commission to do the work. So how did we end up having $71,000 that was not used?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, my understanding is that the Red River Basin had to invoice us for that, and they did not invoice us during that time for any funds.
They let me know that the programming for aquatic invasive species ended in 2016. So.
Who knew?
Well, I'm surprised we're still able to get those funds.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, well, I mean, that,
Yeah, they come every year, and all we have to do is create a plan or pass this resolution, and that is sufficient for the DNR to get that funding. And I have confirmed that it can be rolled over from year to year, so that $71,000 is still there and able to be used by the Soil and Water Conservation District.
so like Commissioner Mojo said, we've had an excellent relationship with your organization. I think of the feedlot program that since we turned that over to you guys, I haven't had one phone call regarding feedlot issues.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, well, prior to that, my phone rang often about feedlot issues, so thank you for that. But again, anytime there's money given to you, I always look for an accountability. What's the plan?
Well, I was out last week, took a drive through 3 of the 4 lakes just to see what has been done, if anything, out there. And I stopped at Silver Lake, Sand Lake, and Lee Lake. And Lee Lake and Silver Lake do have some signage out there. There are some parking spaces that are presently used by those that are fishing out there. And then I went to Sand Lake, and there really is no markings, no signatures, no posting of any signs. So those are the things that we need to work with the DNR to get signage for those things to see what is required of those areas. And then also, the River Keepers in Fargo has contacted us, so they would like to do some along some of their walkways along the river, get some, they have some signs, but if we could post some signs on the backside, maybe with aquatic invasive species. Just
Do we have
some
access
information.
points on the river that
Well,
have
we have one
those?
along the river now that, because from what I'm understanding, and I think Emma knows the program much better than I, but the program allows for every lake that has a public access, there's a certain amount of dollars for each one of those, as well as the number of parking spaces, there are some dollars affixed to that. So the $17,000 that I think she's spoke to us a little bit about, there's 4 lakes of record in the county along with the parking spaces. We know of one spot along the Red River at that Johnson Park up there that is a public access. There's nothing down there that I believe is not even a record, and there are some parking spaces. So I think our plan is to work with, river keepers. We've already got a good partnership with those on a few other events. And if we can expand on this and bring some more additional funds to the county, I guess we're willing to do it with what's necessary. But if we can get another site, I guess we're not opposed to taking a few extra dollars if the DNR's got them available. But I think our plan is to work with our staff. I've talked to Lynn, who is our water resources technician or management technician, and it's water related. I think we're going to put him as kind of the go-to person on this. But as a staff, we all work together on things, so it'll be something we do as a joint project.
And I think part of the other discussion from the SWC board was that, I don't know if you've been in Becker County and Otter Tail, but they've done some pretty substantial PR pieces in terms of invasive species awareness and checking your motors and not to transport pieces. And so I think the hope was that we could do some sort of piggybacking off of what's already been done.
And you know, just recently, Wilcom County has taken on the SWCD was transferred the responsibilities from the county environmental services person who retired. They transferred those responsibilities just like what you are looking at doing, transferring it to the SWCD. I have talked to Norman County, and the SWCD has been the go-to people there. So I think around this we can probably piggyback off of some of what you guys have been doing. My information, basically kind of education is the big deal, getting the word out. I know Becker County, they get lots more dollars than what Clay County would, but they've had some of these wash bays where you would try to rinse off some of those.
You get major.
Exactly, yeah. So
Pelican Lake.
that's what our plan is right now, and I guess I've asked Emma for kind of what has been done as a DNR report of some kind. It sounds like pretty minimal stuff, but we'd be happy to let them know what we're doing as well as you about what we're doing. So.
And they have pretty good templates for putting together an end of the year report. So it goes over to Kevin, and maybe that's something that not only present that to the DNR, but come back here.
Sure.
Each year and present that to you guys.
Okay, we've got a resolution. The board, would you like me to read the resolution?
I move that we approve resolution 2019-21.
You're tired of me reading the proclamation.
I want to hear you there, Jack.
He is a Moorhead grad, so he can read, I know that.
He's read enough today.
Okay.
For anybody who wants to know, they can find it.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you.
Kevin, before you leave, one item that in discussion we've had is that with our gravel pits in Clay County and our invasive weed list, North Dakota on some of their projects requires that the gravel coming into North Dakota is certified weed-free. The problem is that North Dakota has a different noxious weed list than we do. And so if our weed inspector would go look at a gravel pit right now and certify it weed-free for Minnesota, it's not technically weed-free from Cass County. It sounds as though Cass County used to allow their weed inspector to come to Clay County, look at the gravel pits, certify that it met their list going forward, but it sounds like no longer is able to do that. Either the Cass County Commissioners or the administrator requested that they no longer cross into Clay County. And from my perspective, I think the more we can collaborate, the better, specifically in terms of building projects. But it also kind of puts us, we need to work together to figure out how to best do that. And so the list is fairly similar, but there's about 5 or 6 big ones that are different. And so can we work with Cass County to figure that out? And I think that would really help the SWCD office, because they're getting calls. There are different producers that are.
Exactly right, yeah. We had our first call last week, and kind of puts us into a little bit of a rough spot with, they want gravel from Clay County, but it has to be certified by somebody to go out there and certify that it's weed-free gravel coming into their county. And with their ag inspector before, we allowed him to come across we went out with him a number of times just to go take a look and see what he did. And he was basically verifying that there were no North Dakota noxious weeds present, and that was okay. But with us to go out there, I don't, we can find the list what it is, but in Minnesota, we're looking for Minnesota noxious weeds. So we're basically, presently, we've been going out there, taking a look and saying, if there are no Minnesota noxious weeds, basically a statement saying, no Minnesota noxious weeds are found. And I don't know how that's gonna fly with there, but with their decision to not allow their ag inspector to come over to take a look, kind of puts, somebody has to make a decision, so.
But we had that conversation when we met with the DNR commissioner a couple months ago, that we knew that was a problem. The development has changed now that Cass County is not going to inspect in Clay County. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Emma, you have to stay for a minute, sorry. Next item is request to appoint Emma Hartman as interim planning and zoning director. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As this board's aware, we have been without a director since March 8th. On or about that date, I sat down with Emma and Rita from planning and zoning, kind of discussed their thought process and how best to move forward. We'd had some additional help when we were without a director previously. After talking with Emma, she felt comfortable with the responsibilities of the role. Our hope was that we would be able to fill it sooner than later. It's gone on a little bit longer than we had hoped. Having said that, we have made an offer, and we hope to have a new planning and zoning director in shortly. Unfortunately, this person is probably looking at about another 3 to 4 weeks once the offer's been made. And so at that point, Emma would be in the role, running the day-to-day operations, planning commission, board of adjustments for about 3 months. And so the request before the board today would be to name her the interim planning and zoning director. This would allow us to provide back pay going back to March 11th, and we pay at that rate until the new director would come on board. The additional funds that Darren provided would be, the back pay would be $2,601.60, and then again, whatever that dollar amount is moving forward for the next few weeks.
Okay, well, you've done a great job, Emma. We appreciate what you've done, and I think this is well deserved, so, for the board's comments.
I just want to say thank you, Emma. You really came in, and as a liaison to the Planning Commission, I kind of field a lot of those phone calls, and I can honestly say that I've received nothing but praise for the work that you've done. So thank you for that. My question is for Steve. Are we the pay step piece?
Well, we're offering the grade 23 step 1. So the funding for this, of course, is included in the 2019 budget. As we've been without a position for a number of months.
Great. Are the board's wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
My only discussion is that back to March 11th until the first day of a new, or are we leaving it open?
I would say to the first day of the new,
okay.
planning director.
Okay, that's my motion request.
Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you again, Emma. Did you want to make a speech or anything? No. Okay, request approval of letter for Buffalo Red Watershed Board. Steve?
As we've discussed on April 23rd, the Buffalo Red River Water District had an informational meeting in regards to their permit process and permit B of the diversion. They allowed for time for public comment. We had people that spoke both in favor and opposition. And at the end of the meeting, they offered the ability for people to provide additional testimony in letter form up until May 10th. And so attached to your agenda is a letter, or a draft of a letter up for your consideration. With that, I turn it over for comments or questions.
Kevin?
Chair, I think this, I think quite a few of us did attend that meeting, and I know I talked with Commissioner Wayland after the meeting and felt that it was important that we maybe submit some information that's important from the county standpoint, and in some instances to shed some light on our reasons why we've supported this since the beginning in terms of the, you know, the diversion project. And so with that, you know, we basically wanted to get some clarification on some technical numbers which are in here that deals with the state DNR EIS as well as the federal that deals with benefits to Moorhead in Minnesota. And it certainly isn't all of the benefits, but there's some of them. And so we requested this letter be put together, and I think it does a fairly good job of saying where we've been in this project, and that we certainly are encouraging the Buffalo Red to provide a permit to the Diversion Authority for it. So just a little more history behind it. So
Thank you.
so
Any other questions for Steve on this? What are the board's wishes?
I do want to say too that they had, this wasn't really a public hearing, so to speak, but it was a public information meeting, and they did request information, or they did suggest people could, and entities, and so this is in response to that. So I would move that we forward the draft letter to the Buffalo Red.
I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second sending the letter. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, let's see. Next item, request authorization to purchase one additional fleet vehicle. Georgia. Good morning, Georgia.
Good morning. I have just a memo there. Good morning. I'm requesting authorization to purchase one additional fleet vehicle. The purpose of purchasing an additional instead of reducing our fleet number is the high usage of our transports with the social service department and then our traveling with the other departments. The purpose of the adjusted memo was the first price quote that was submitted did not include rear air or heat in the vehicle, and we felt that was a necessity.
In this time, day and age, who does not include
And we
heat
thought that
and
would be
AC in a vehicle, a brand new vehicle, right?
The original one that's part of the state bid, and this one is too, but it pushes us to the next package, and that's actually the only feature we really need out of that next package. But that's the reason for the adjustment or the price increase in the vehicle.
Okay, questions?
So, Georgia, is this kind of a move away from the lease?
We have leased in the past, and I think we still will continue to lease the vehicles. However, we are, because of the usage, we are getting up to that high max of the vehicle on the leases, so it's nice if we can have a split. If once we go over that lease mileage, we don't necessarily lose or pay more, but when it comes for trade-in, so we'd like to maybe even that out a little bit more. I wouldn't say we'll go totally away from leasing, but we will probably consider purchasing a few more of the vehicles. Try and even it out. We have a total of 10, 7 are leased and 3 are owned right now. The other thing we'd like to do is when they're owned, they may have high mileage, but they may be still a good working vehicle to pass on to another department that still needs a vehicle but doesn't have the high usage.
I would comment that I drive a vehicle with 260,000 miles on it, but I won't make that comment.
Okay, what are the board's wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Georgia.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, Highway Department items. Dave, come on up. Dust control quote and update the National Association of County Engineers documents.
I got a
Morning.
little, introduction.
Yeah.
Hey.
It's our new assistant engineer, Justin Sorum.
Hi.
Starting week number 2.
Welcome, Justin. Glad to have you aboard.
Yes, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so far so good. Justin's got years of experience in construction and consulting, and he's got a good CAD background, and pretty much echoes some of the experience we had when Eric was here. So looking forward to a good summer. We've already had some meetings out in Glendon, so I'm kind of getting almost fired up on our job out there, and it should be a good summer.
Well, I'll keep you busy.
Yes,
So that's good.
definitely.
Our first item is the 2019 dust control quote. We sent that out. We only, did everybody get the abstract on that? We only got one bidder. Price is a little bit more than it was last year, and I'm not exactly sure. I know last year's contractor missed the deadline. He was out of town, so I feel a little bad that we didn't get different numbers. The one good thing is, I guess, Knife River recently acquired Tri-City Paving, who used to do the dust control 3-4 years ago, and then prior to that, they've done it every year since I started. So I do know we've got a knowledgeable contractor. They've contacted us, and they're excited to kind of get ready and get going. And we've been getting some calls from the local residents that are in the program, and as the dust starts flying, there'll be more people calling. So the sooner we can get going, the better. I guess I'd request we move forward with the one quote we do have.
Is that much work where we only had one bid or the rest of them?
No, I don't know what it was for sure. I think in the past, we've always had 2 or 3 kind of local or normal customers or contractors, and Glacier normally put a bid in for some reason. I think he just thought maybe he wasn't going to get it. He's always a little higher because he doesn't buy quite as much volume. So I think that was kind of why he didn't put a bid in. Northern Salt, he was out of town. He missed our deadline. We sent it out, and we've had communication, and I'm not really sure what happened. But like I said, the price is a little bit more, but it's not near a price where we wouldn't accept it. So
I just want to make sure that with a new contractor that, we've had a revolving door of people that are providing it, that any of the comments in terms of how to streamline or make it better gets communicated to the new company. Because I know that there were some hiccups in terms of either communicating between drivers or
yeah, you're right, there's a lot of moving parts there. There was our own guys, there was, when you get real late in the years, there's a couple times where we needed to get out and get the roads done, so there was some communication, I think, real issues between us and the contractors. One, we were gonna have the roads ready for them, and I'm expecting it to go pretty good. Like I said, these guys used to do it before some of that stuff happened, so they should, and it's the same company, same crews. They're still operating out of Little Falls, even though it's Knife River's main office, or the office they listed anyway, Sauk Rapids. But we never used to have the meetings that we started having in the last couple of years, just because it flowed so well. We never had issues. But so we will have that same meeting, even though these guys are, they used to do it, and we'll make sure we kind of cover some of those things when we meet with them.
And I guess that's my other concern, is that it was nice to have a company in the Fargo-Moorhead area when something accidentally got bladed that wasn't supposed to get bladed, we could have them come out and do it. I mean, if these guys are farther away, I'm worried that...
Sure, something we will talk about as far as, and sometimes stuff gets added too. Maybe somebody misses the deadline, or maybe we add a spot or a gravel pit pops up somewhere that we need some chloride added, so we'll work with them on that.
I'd move approval of 2019 quote from Knife River.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, attend National Association of County Engineers Conference in Wichita.
So I put together just a little sheet on what I all attended, and something that we started, I think, this last year, I guess, giving a little update to the commission as far as the conference itself, what the benefits are to sending us to these type of conferences. And there was a lot of pavement management, there was a lot of dust control and gravel road type maintenance, and there's a safety track that a lot of engineers go to. I primarily went to the pavement management and the dust control sessions. I learned that there's a lot of different types of pavement management out there. There's hot in place, cold in place. Justin's got some experience in those areas. We mostly just do mill and overlays or reconstruct, but I think we're gonna have to start looking into some of this pavement management stuff. It's ways to continually keep what you already put in place. So essentially, mill and overlays, a lot of times when you do that, you're freshening up the very top parts of the mix, but a lot of those cracks will come through, and in a few years, it doesn't look like you really gained an awful lot. Some of these other practices, they go a little bit deeper, and basically it's all about, you know, keeping what you have and trying to extend the life and extend your dollars into what you're doing. So, there's a lot of that going on in other areas outside of Minnesota. Like a lot going on. Minnesota's kind of getting into it. We don't have a lot of contractors locally that do it, but the big guys that do it are starting to come this way in marketing their process and how they do it. There's a couple of different processes. They use some different types of rejuvenating oils and things. So it's something that, you know, I think we need to take a look at where and when we would use it. With our pavement management program in the project we did last year, we identified some of this stuff, and we had some of the big players like Dan Wegman from Braun came up and drove a whole bunch of our roads and said, well, this is a good candidate for this type of process, this is a good candidate for that, this is a road that you probably can't do that on. So we identified a bunch of different things, and I think moving forward we're going to continue to do that. As far as like gravel road maintenance and dust control type abatements and things, I actually kind of feel like we're maybe a little ahead of the curve on that. Some of the things they were talking about, we had learned lessons on that years ago, so I feel like we're doing pretty good on that. Some of the chemicals that we use and the stabilization thing that we did last year, and some of the prices on that we're doing projects on that are way cheaper than some of the vendors that I talked to. They were quite impressed that we were getting a square yard price that we were, so I felt pretty good about that. There was a guy there that had some deck sealing materials and how they seal concrete decks, and I visited with him a little bit. The Wall Street Bridge needs to have a seal on there. There's some hairline cracks that are showing up, and we don't need all this chlorides getting in there over the winter time and having that deck fall apart any quicker than it could. So I made some good contacts there. There were some guys that were selling some GPS tracking equipment that I visited with a little bit, and I thought that was really good. Most of our trucks don't have that type of equipment. The blades do. We've got some ideas there on basically trying to lump things together a little bit so that our maintenance foreman can just take a look and pretty much see the entire fleet. You know, a lot of times in the summertime or wintertime, you have people call in and say they either haven't seen you or you haven't been on this road for this many days, and it's just kind of nice to have the data to look back and say, oh yeah, for some reason this road isn't getting done, or if just because they don't see it or don't see the tracks on the gravel doesn't mean he wasn't there, and some of those things. So there might, you know, kind of looking into that. I know vehicle tracking has been a big thing for a long time, and I know years ago I remember reading articles about what Fargo was doing and with some of their stuff. So I'm going to keep visiting with these guys a little bit. We're also visiting with our local vendors to see what what the options that they provide as well. So,
Dave, what are you seeing? I know when MnDOT added cameras to their snowplows specifically and were able to have it on their mobile platform, are any counties doing that?
So we have cameras on the trucks themselves, but it's more just looking out the back where you can see the sanders and where their wing is and stuff like that. They do way more tracking than we do. You know, they've actually got counters on there, so they can. I think down in St. Paul, they probably know how much salt is getting put down by each truck, and some of the, you know, they've got extensive calibrations that they have to do with them. And I don't really see the counties, you know, maybe some of the bigger ones down in the metro area are doing more of that. What we may need to look at is, you know, right now we just mostly use 90% sand and 10% salt. MnDOT uses all salt. I don't think they use any sand, but they also use like a pre-wetting and they put down the salt brine ahead of time. They try to make the road so the snow doesn't freeze and stick to it, and then you got to try to scrape it off. So, you know, maybe right around the Moorhead area where or more heavily trafficked road, maybe we need to take a look at a couple trucks and equip them with some of the brine. I think that might be something that we want to look at.
I think that in terms of public knowledge, to be able to have some sort of platform where you could see what the plow trucks are seeing in these storms, that may be helpful to the public.
Gotcha.
And then my other question is there any discussion at the national level, and it's probably because it's produced here, it maybe would be more beneficial, but in terms of sugar beet juice being used as a prime.
Yeah, there's,
for-
you know, I've heard different things on that. Some people are really against it. They say that the beet juice is actually way more corrosive, and I guess what we should probably do is, twice a year, we try to meet with Cass County and visit with them about what they're doing. They're right across the river, but I know City of Fargo does a lot of the beet juice stuff. And I know their maintenance supervisor over there, Ben Dow, I should meet with him and see what his feelings are with the beet juice, and if that's something that we should be looking at, since
Okay.
probably have product right here.
Okay, thanks.
And
Appreciate it.
the last thing that I do have, and I'll hand it out to Colleen, it's a distribution that MnDOT sends out every year, and it's the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund, and it shows all the money that comes from the gas tax and how it breaks down, and I just thought I'd pass that pamphlet out.
Thank you.
Yes,
Welcome
it was
again.
nice meeting you all.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
Okay, last item, request approval to fill 2 positions in public health. Jamie and Kathy. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Jim?
We don't want to get them mixed up, so the one I'm passing around is for the WIC. We have 2 positions.
This one's for the public health nurse that's
Yeah.
going around, she said.
Oh,
Passed around at the same time, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
That's WIC. So the first position is a request for our WIC director who is retiring. She actually just received her plaque for 35 years.
Sorry, we
Last
don't know
month.
how to pass paper.
I know, we should have been a little more synchronized on that. There's one for a WIC director and then one for a public
yeah,
health
three.
nurse. We should have written
Sorry,
take off
guys,
of
we
that.
should have held on to it.
I wrote on the top of Steve's, but I did not write on yours. Sorry about that. So the WIC director, you'd see the name Dawn in there. Okay. So she's retiring after 35 years, so we need to fill that full-time position. It's, of course, required, state and federal requirements for the WIC program,
That's all
women,
she's gonna
infant,
put
and
in is
children.
35 years, huh?
35 years. It's incredible, huh? So we have an internal dietitian who meets the requirements for that director position, who's also been here an extensive period of time. So we would look at the qualifications for promoting her. And then we have a variable hour dietitian who's been working with our WIC program for a while, so there's a potential to backfill. So my request is to fill the WIC director position. She's retiring close to the end of June. Of course, after 35 years, there will be some payout for her, as you can see. That's the $24,061. So, and then we'd have an overlap, if that is acceptable to the board.
Does she not get sick in 35 years at all?
Oh, rare, and you know how much time you accumulate, you know, it's the vacation time that builds up and the sick leave too, so she's quite a healthy individual, so she takes her minimum amount of time for vacations. So after 35 years, yes, there's a little bit of payout, so the request is to fill that position and then, of course, fill the backfill positions as well. Is there any questions about the WIC director position?
Any questions? Or the board's wishes on that position?
This is state and federal funding, by the way, that covers this whole program.
I'd move approval of the request.
Have a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay.
Thank you, and I'll let Jamie go on with our
Okay,
open.
now I'll pass the rest of these that way. But the one that has Paula's name on it, and that is the request to fill a public health nurse, adult health position. And that position is fully funded by the health plans and DHS, revenue generating position. And that nurse position would put us at down 4.
Well, actually 5. We have, with her, it'll be 5 open positions. We just had 3 candidates that applied for 3 open positions, and all 3 have declined based on some counteroffers in their current employment. So we've lost the 3 that applied for 3 positions. So we're really struggling with that. 1 was in detox and 2 were with public health. So as you all know, as we've talked about, I struggle with the nurse positions, so.
I hate to bring it up.
I know. I hate to even say it anymore.
Yeah,
Seems like a
we're-
broken record, but that's what it.
We're all well aware it's a
Yes,
issue,
exactly.
so.
So it's hard to even lose a nurse that's been trained in now for a year. So,
We do show a little bit of a cost savings in the position. However, the salary is at step 1, which the nurses, the applicants we are getting are really at step 1 for the supervisor at the county. So that's a pretty low salary. So not expecting that there would be a cost savings if we're able to fill this position.
Sure.
Make a motion to approve the request.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thanks, ladies.
thank you.
Good luck. You need it.
Thanks.
Pam, anything else from you? Steve, anything else?
Nothing else, Chair.
Blaine, nothing? We are adjourned.